Yep, we're back. Battlefield's back, oh, we're so back! Battlefield's so back, baby! Battlefield's so back! Battlefield is back, baby, is what absolutely everyone is saying. And it seems like they've just completely been playing a different game than me. Seriously, I'm a Battlefield fan. I love the Battlefield franchise, and I wanted Battlefield 6 to be successful, and I'm glad it is. But the fact that people are just seemingly ignoring a lot of the stuff that has to do with the vehicles specifically in this game is baffling. I surely should have put it in the video by now, but the state of the vehicles currently in Battlefield 6 is embarrassing, and the fact that they released the stuff in this state should be addressed. No amount of the infantry gameplay is good, or it wasn't as bad as 2042 at launch, is going to excuse the fact that these things are happening and we need to be vocal about them so that way they do get fixed. Anyways, obviously you saw that opening clip, so you already know that hit detection across the board when it comes to vehicles is just mega scuffed. But it's not just ground vehicles that have mega scuffed hit detection. You can see the exact same stuff happen on the jets as well, and really any vehicle in the game. I don't know what's going on here, but you should not be hitting targets, seeing yourself hit the target, and dealing no damage. This was a problem and has been a problem in the Battlefield franchise, but never has it seemed so bad than right now. Before I truly get into it, as for the overall launch of the game, I'm not going to touch on the fact that EA app players like myself literally couldn't play for several hours, but I will touch on a couple bugs that are just so baffling and didn't have to do with vehicles that I ran into in the first day of playing that I had to put them on here. First of all, the 100 damage bug, it's still here, they didn't fix it, who's surprised? Nobody. Second of all, my friend died right next to a building and his foot got stuck in a piece of rubble, which means I guess we can't revive him anymore. Savvy viewers may remember that that was a 2042 problem. Well, surprise, it's still here. My biggest complaint from the beta, or at least one of my biggest complaints, the matchmaking bug, still completely intact. Of course it can, because why shouldn't it be more difficult to play with your friends? You know, we already have it limited to 4-player parties for absolutely no reason, meaning when I want to play with more than 4 people, we have to do some weird-ass queue game where you manually join someone and then have to split up the squads in-game. But not only that, the game can start and I just don't get put in, getting me also stuck in a queue. So now we have 2 or 3 people sitting in a queue when we should all just be playing the damn game. Takedowns are still borderline non-functional, with them just not triggering when they should. The rocket launcher, after you reload and go to fire it, and sometimes just randomly decides to slam into the ground because I don't know, it just does. And most bafflingly of all, for some reason, they managed to forget to put certain vehicles on certain teams on certain maps. If you've been playing Manhattan Bridge, you may have noticed that the NATO team just doesn't get their helicopter. So if you want to take on the enemy helicopter, good luck. You may have noticed that on New Sobek City, neither team gets a helicopter, except for one team gets a transport. Operation Firestorm. NATO doesn't get their helicopter, and a lot of the time, doesn't get their transport helicopter either. King's Battery, NATO doesn't get their IFV, the only vehicle on the entire map that they can use to fight back against the enemy vehicles. And if it wasn't bad enough, we still have the absolute map design travesty of spawning vehicles on the maps and on flags, which apparently on Mirak Valley, somebody took way too seriously, giving one flag access to an extra tank, an extra AA, and an extra attack helicopter? Guys, what are we doing? Do you understand how much of an advantage it is to now own that one flag? Why would you do that? Anyways, let's talk ground vehicles first. These are the things that probably need the least amount of work, but still have plenty of problems and plenty of boneheaded decisions tied to them that I can't not talk about them. First of all, the entire rearm mechanic in terms of going to repair stations is still extremely flawed and doesn't seem to have been changed at all from the beta. Vehicles like the IFV still have to go to a resupply station if they run out of ammo and wait there for minutes at a time doing nothing, which is horrible from a gameplay perspective and just makes it harder to push forward if you're playing well because you spend half the time trying to get your ammo back. It's something that you won't really notice too much if you're playing with a tank or an AA, because those things generally reload quicker and also don't use as much ammo, but the IFVs, it's miserable. In terms of the repair stations, for some reason, these are not an in-world icon that shows up on your map, meaning if you don't know where they are, you could spend minutes at a time wandering around looking for a resupply station that may or may not be there. You'd think such an integral mechanic to the game would be marked on your map at all times so you could see where it was, so you could go there, you know, to not just completely nuke newer players to the game. But no, clearly that wasn't a priority. If you get close enough to the repair station, sometimes it'll show you that there's one there, and sometimes it won't. Bouncy tank syndrome is still here at large, meaning as you're driving around trying to keep the tank on a level ground without it bouncing all over the place, easier said than done. Astoundingly, they decided to make it so that way when you jump out of your vehicle and start repairing it, it makes it so that way the enemy can't steal it. I don't exactly know why they decided to make this decision. I don't totally hate this decision, but there's a pretty horrible side effect of that. And that's that if you hop out of the IFV, and since your team technically still owns it, if you're repairing the IFV, some dumb shit can just spawn on it and start driving away. This was a fantastic opportunity for them to finally implement some sort of mechanic to block people from getting into the driver and gunner seats of vehicles when you hop out to repair them, so that way you don't just have to fight some idiot in chat for half the round when they steal your friend's gunner seat solely because they were trying to repair the vehicle to stop you from dying. Seriously, look at this. I hop out to repair, this idiot gets in, and now our tank is gone. That tank was the only reason we were ever going to get anywhere, and this dumb fuck blew it up because there's nothing stopping him from just yoinking the tank. Why is it programmed this way? How have we had so many Battlefield games and this is still a problem? Just make it so if you jump out and you have a repair tool and you're standing next to the tank, it locks the seat unless you die or walk further away. It's not rocket science. A toddler could come up with solutions like this. This is a AAA game studio with millions of dollars behind it. How is this stuff still happening? And I didn't want to use this video to talk about balance too much, considering that the balance is a complete disaster right now, most notably on the anti-aircraft, which basically requires you to get the high velocity ammo to make it an actual viable anti-aircraft, and it feels completely useless until you do. But the real baffling balance decision that I had to mention was the way that they handled APS in this game. It feels like a joke, like they were trying to make fun of people who like to use ground vehicles and go, haha lol, just get killed by the people in aircraft. Because APS not only has a startup window that is considerable, meaning even if you see someone pop out with a rocket launcher and you press the button to activate it, you will still get hit 95% of the time, but also it barely lasts any time at all and has a lengthy cooldown. Was this a sick joke? Were they just trying to make this horrible on purpose? Against the vast majority of the lock-on missiles in the game, even if you pop this immediately upon hearing that it's coming, you're still gonna get hit anyway. So what the hell is the point of this equipment? APS is really important because it's one of those things that actually allows ground vehicles to push objectives. And when APS is weak, and in the state that it's in right now, it means that tanks just have to sit all the way in the back. Otherwise, they're just going to instantly explode from getting hit by 100 missiles at once. That grace period that they can use to either get onto the objective or get off of the objective safely is gone. But the most hilarious thing is that for whatever reason, APS is only on the tank. Why is this only on the tank? Did we not learn our lesson from 2042 where you didn't give APS to the AA and it got erased every time by the helicopter? IFV doesn't get it either, so I guess pushing with the IFV, go fuck yourself, right? You just die. Wait and pray that you get a bunch of teammates to spawn on you to get the point, because you're certainly not doing it with you and just your friends. But last but not least, and probably the most hysterical thing on here, is the way that they handled the boost in this game. Yeah, wait until you hear this. If you haven't noticed yet, Oh my god. So, many people who have played previous Battlefield games will know that in the previous games, boost was tied to your sprint key, and if you held it down, your vehicle would move a fair bit quicker, but at the cost of mobility, so it turned a hell of a lot slower. You could use this to quickly get away from situations or quickly get into situations, what have you. And anyone who's used the boost in that game knows generally you sort of tap the boost for a little bit to get some extra speed, and then you let go in order to turn. Well, when they programmed the boost into this game, some genius thought it would be a really good idea to assign a little bar to this. So now the boost is a usable resource rather than something you always have. Okay, not the end of the world. I can see this being handled well. I mean, the bar has a pretty decent amount of time on it before it uses it up. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is that the second that you press the boost and then let go, it deletes the entire rest of the boost. Was this programmed by a toddler? How did this happen? You'd think it would just start refilling from wherever the boost last stopped, but no, it's just all gone. So anyone with muscle memory from any of the previous games that's going to tap their boost in certain situations to get some extra speed is just shit out of luck. But not only that, the boost still heavily impacts your mobility, which means that there's never a chance where you can actually use the boost to its fullest extent. There's just none. I don't know how this happened. It's like they didn't check this stuff at all before they released it. But the ground vehicles, oh my god, the ground vehicles, they are the tip of the iceberg because the real problems start with the aircraft. The aircraft in this game, holy afterthought. That's what I have to say about them. First of all, the most important thing to note, and something that I didn't want to believe before the game came out. I didn't. I was looking all throughout the week before this game came out, and I was looking everywhere. I was like, it can't be true. There's no way they're gonna do this, and they did it, and they did it. And that proves to me, I'm sorry, I will die on this hill, it proves to me that this game was intended to come out in May, at least sometime in the spring, and when GTA got pushed back, they went, oh shit, and they shoved it out the door, and here we are. And that problem is the fact that jets have zero, read my lips, zero customization. None. How? How did this happen? Did they give up? Did they forget? I can't fathom how. Every Battlefield game, every single one that has had a plane since Battlefield 3, you know, a game that came out in 2011? Yeah, every game since then has had some sort of jet customization or plane customization. And here, there's nothing. They put nothing here. Not only did they put nothing, but I've got a little tidbit of information for you. You ever notice that it was kind of weird that the fighter jets in the game don't have a secondary weapon like the attack jets do? There's just like no missile weapon? Well, I can tell you why that happened. I'm 100% sure I know why that happened. And that's because they're supposed to have air-to-air lock-on missiles. But in the labs build that I played months ago, which I'm fairly certain I'm allowed to talk about, and in the creator playtest that came out like a week ago that you can find footage of on YouTube, the rockets just completely ignored all countermeasures in the game, and so they had to take them out of the game before it came out to avoid completely breaking it. So the fighter jets just don't get a secondary because it was so broken. I just don't understand. How did the AA have anti-air missiles that don't break, but the jet didn't, so they just gave up? Seriously though, even the bones could have been here for some different weapons. Like, for example, in one of those labs builds that I played really early on, the attack jet, the AGM that it had on there was also a player-aimed missile. So it was like a hybrid. So you could lock on and shoot, or you could shoot and manually guide it. And it was really fun. They could have just made the manually guided one an attachment or an unlock, but no, it just doesn't exist now. Seriously, this is unacceptable. There's no way around it. Unacceptable that there's zero customization for the planes. What the fuck? I guess while we're on the topic of planes, surprise, surprise, the flare bug still completely intact, still get hit through your flares. It seems reduced, it's still there. This just This shouldn't happen. One of the most obnoxious things about flying, once again, loops all the way back around to that vehicle resupply thing that I talked about earlier, because the air vehicles, you need to go back to your airfield to resupply. But this is just glitchy, to say the least, and half the time I would go back to my base and try to resupply, the game just wouldn't do it. I'd fly back and forth, and it just refused to refuel my aircraft. It refused. If I remember correctly, Battlefield 5 tried to do this resupply thing, and they had this big area in the sky where you could go to refuel your planes, and I don't understand why they didn't just do that here instead of putting this tiny little area where you have to clump up all the aircraft every time they want to resupply. There were a couple times where I nearly ran into our helicopter trying to resupply because the helicopter has to use the exact same spots that all of the planes do. Naturally, I'd be absolutely remiss not to mention the fact that the aircraft spawns on runways. One of the worst ideas that you could ever have in a video game. Seriously, this is horrendous. I do not care. I repeat, I do not care how much you think it's immersive and it's so much fun to take off from. Shut the fuck up. Actually shut the fuck up. You are an idiot, because from a game design perspective, this is horrible. And you're looking at it. You're looking at why this is horrible. Why can you do this? Who thought that this was a good idea? How is the enemy team supposed to take off if somebody is smart and just blows them up on the runway every single time? It means that once one player who's good in the jet has won the initial dogfight, the enemy team will never take off ever again. What are we doing here? We solved this. This problem was solved. 2042 solved it. Even Battlefield 4 on several of the maps solved it. And it's solved on some of the maps in this game. Or I guess one of the maps. Liberation Peak spawns your aircraft already flying, so you don't just blow up the millisecond you try to take off. Who would have guessed? And you know what? Fine. How about, hear me out here, just put an option in the menu. Start on runway. Make it so the planes don't spawn on the runway by default. If you click it, it checks your setting, and if you have spawn on runway, you can spawn on the runway and die immediately. I, personally, would prefer to be able to play before I explode. And honestly, it's really funny because it seems like they made some sort of attempt to try to curb spawn killing by making it so that way the AA gun that's in the spawn will automatically shoot down any missiles that are fired. But surprise, surprise, this doesn't mean anything when machine guns and other fast projectile weapons don't get shot down by the AA gun. So the real result of this is it means that mobile AAs that sit in the spawn are borderline invulnerable because they can't get hit by missiles. Meanwhile, the grounded aircraft are not protected at all. So if anything, this is a direct negative to the overall health of the game rather than being a positive like they wanted it to be. And you know that thrust vectoring thing that you've probably heard a fair bit about? You probably think it's pretty neat. You know, it looks cool. It probably doesn't break the game, wrong. Not only am I pretty sure that we were all wrong about speed control, something that I might eat my words on, but at the very least, it seemed like when I went and recorded things and looked back at the footage, just mashing the afterburner, something that, once again, to be clear, does not have a bar on it like the boosts do for some reason, even though this is one of those things that would make sense to have a bar on it, like, oh, I don't know, it does in 2042? But regardless, it seemed about a second faster to just mash the afterburner than it was to try to speed control the aircraft, or even just have it move at a standard pace while not using the afterburner. At the end of the day, though, none of this stuff ends up mattering because the fighter jets can use thrust vectoring to totally break their turning circle and make it so if somebody knows about this little tech, they'll never lose, and if somebody doesn't know about it and they're going up against somebody who does, they'll never win. If you want to never die ever again in the fighter jets, here's my little piece of advice. If you're flying and you hold shift to start your thrust vector, then you hold whatever pitch up key you have, which is spacebar in my case, and then you feather the S key over and over and over again, you'll basically cut your turn circle in half, making it so that way you will always outturn every other plane in the game. You're welcome. There's probably other broken stuff that people are going to figure out about this, but this was something I learned about literally within 2 hours on day one. So yeah, sorry to all of my friends who like the attack jets out there, but if someone is doing this in your lobby with fighter jet, I mean, you were already at a disadvantage, now you're fucked. And if you're a plane pilot pilot in this game, you knew I was gonna mention this, but what the hell happened with the minimap and the radar? Do the DICE devs that made this game understand anything about how dogfighting works in Battlefield games and how important the radar is? Why is the map so zoomed in, and why can't I see anything? You'd think this would be like a day one thing they fixed, especially since I saw people complain about it in the lab server. I've seen content creators who fly stuff complain about it, and it's still here? Are they just ignoring all these people? Do they just not want to do it? Seriously, it's like impossible to keep track of where people are because their little jet blip is on my map for 0.2 seconds and then it's gone. I don't know when they're breaking off of a turn. I have no idea what the hell they're doing. I just hope they don't do that because I can't tell. My radar doesn't work. Anyways, off the topic of planes, let's talk about helicopters. First, I have to mention it. Manhattan Bridge, the fishbowl map. Did they test this at all for the helicopters? People have talked about fishbowl maps in Battlefield before. A lot of people mention maps like Dawnbreaker from Battlefield 4, which is a decent example, and I don't think that it's that bad on that map, especially when it comes to the jets. I think it's kind of fun. It feels a little fishbowl-y, but never in my life have I played a more fishbowl-like map than Manhattan Bridge. Seriously. There's just no way helicopters were designed to be played on this map, and I don't even know why they put it on the map. Not only that, but there are invisible walls that jut out of some of the buildings that are in bounds that you can run into that if you do, will kill you instantly. Because on this tiny ass map, we didn't miss the giant invisible wall sticking out of a building that'll blow you up. Apparently that's too much to ask. What the hell do I know, right? In terms of the heli flight physics, I'll admit, they're improved. It's definitely better than the beta. But, I'm just gonna come out and say it, they're just still not as fun as the previous games. It still feels like I'm kind of flying a boat, and they definitely work. You can definitely make them powerful, but if they're not fun to use, it almost doesn't even really matter how powerful they are. They've talked about adding a little bird, and I cannot see the little bird even being remotely enjoyable to play unless they do a complete overhaul of the flight mechanics on the helicopters, because trying to fly now, especially on that Manhattan Bridge map, is rough, to say the least. And I mean, for God's sakes, that's not even to mention the fact that for some reason, the out of bounds timer for the helicopters on that map is 4 seconds. So if you make one wrong turn, or you even go out of the map for a second, you explode. The fishbowl nature wasn't enough, I suppose. What a joke. I think the real killer for the attack helicopter, though, is the fact that the starting loadout that they give you is directly detrimental and fools you into, like, I don't know what they were thinking. The default missiles are the smart missiles that attempt to go towards the center of your crosshair. It's basically like an aim-guided missile, but several of them. The problem is that they added this little cursor that shows you where your rockets generally are going to hit. But with the aim-guided missiles, this crosshair means jack shit. It doesn't mean anything. So if people who are new don't know this, they're going to attempt to use the crosshair, not ever hit anything, and be like, what is happening? And to be clear, the missiles are still affected by the movement of the aircraft to some extent. The crosshair just lies to you and tells you where they aren't going to hit because they'll never hit there. It's just baffling and directly self-destructive. Why would this be the default that they give people if it goes against the UI that you're directly looking at? And I suppose we could also talk about the fact that the render distance is just scuffed right now. This isn't directly a heli gunner specific problem, but you can see in the clip that I'm showing right now that I'm looking and locking onto something that just is not there. Render distance is really, really important in Battlefield, especially in the air vehicles. And the amount of time that I was flying around looking to try to find an anti-aircraft that was shooting at me and it just didn't render in was far too many. Maybe this is a performance related thing, and if that's the case, at least let people toggle it, because I've got all of the settings cranked up to pretty much the maximum, and I still can't see people further away. This should never happen, and I don't even know how this could happen. This is one of those things that you would notice immediately that could be a gameplay problem and be like, all right, that's not good. And it makes me wonder, maybe the reason that some of the maps are so much smaller is because they knew if they made the maps bigger that you wouldn't even be able to see things that could potentially be shooting at you. Slightly unrelated, but it is related in terms of the helicopter gunner seats. Not only an issue on the attack helicopter, but also an issue on the Black Hawk helicopter. But the helicopter gunner, when you zoom in, I have no words. I have no words, just watch. What is this? What the fuck? Game, what is going on? Why, when I zoom, does it just put me in a random part of the... What in God's name? Wait, it locks onto... Why? It just picks a place and just locks onto it and doesn't move. What the fuck is going on? Yeah, I literally don't know. I could not tell you what's going on here. I don't know. But the real thing that just kills my vibe is the way that they handled the transport helicopters. This is once again one of those Battlefield 4 situations where the transport helicopters are going to get instantly nuked by anything in the sky because of how fast the time to kill is. So you'd think with that being the case, they would at the very least do a decent job at making it so that way they're fun to use and they can, oh, I don't know, maybe both shoot forwards like they could in 2042, like they could in Battlefield 4, like they, no, they can't. If you try to aim any of the miniguns forwards, you hit an invisible barrier and you can't shoot. Why? Why? You fixed this years ago. Why even have two gunner seats if only one person can shoot at any given time? Battlefield 4 fixed this. So yeah, if you've got 3 friends and you want to jump into the transport helicopter and light them up, fuck you, you can't. It's just like, I don't know, man. I can't believe it. I'm pretty much out of steam here, but you can just fly into the enemy spawn in Operation Firestorm, park directly next to the enemy helicopter spawn, and then steal it, so that way they don't have a helicopter for the rest of the game. And I mean, the fact that stuff spawns on the ground, you can do what I and this other guy did here and just steal both the enemy planes off of the runway, meaning that the enemy team just has no planes anymore. You know, the counterplay to planes being planes, and now the enemy has both of yours, so good luck, I guess. Listen, I said it before, I'll say it again. I wanted this game to be the best that it could be. But after playing the game that I did for roughly 8 hours, there's no part of me that doesn't believe that the vehicle aspects of Battlefield 6 are an afterthought, which for a Battlefield game should be unforgivable. And yet all I see everywhere is people hyping shit up and being like, BF is back, baby, over and over and over again, and mass disliking anyone who says otherwise or anyone who has any complaints. And I'm just hoping that in a couple weeks, a couple months, this stuff will die down and people will realize, yeah, things are scuffed right now. Maybe they won't because the vast majority of the player base isn't focused on vehicle-based gameplay, but vehicles in Battlefield should be some sort of priority, and here they just weren't. And I don't know how you could watch this video and come away with a different perspective on that. Anyways, I'm sure there's stuff that I missed. Now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure I had some clip of getting shot in the front by an RPG and losing like 90% of my health and dying instantly, because of course I did. Why wouldn't that happen? Or the fact that the lock-on missiles from, I believe, the planes and the helicopters don't tell you when the incoming missile is coming, so you just have to guess and hope you don't get hit. That's pretty cool. But honestly, I gotta wrap this up. I'm trying to win the rat race after all, and I gotta get these takes out before anyone else does, even though it probably won't matter. I know I probably came off as abrasive in this video, but I can't help it. We should expect better from this game, and they let me down. Anyways, that's all. If you enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe. If you didn't, don't. And with all that being said, have a wonderful day night wherever you are, and I'll see you guys next time.